Poke the Bear is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 157, which is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com/Boston to get up to $200 in bonus bets. $200, Connor. That's Conor Ryan, if you didn't already know. And I'm Evan Marinofsky. Connor, how you doing?
Evan, I'm here. I'm here.
I'm here as well. I am here as well. I think Bruins fans rightfully are sad. Hopefully, maybe remember the phrase, don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. I almost said don't smile because it's over, cry because it happened. I guess that'd be more like a Matt Bolesky contract or something.
Yes.
But this is not that. Patrice Bergeron announced his retirement Tuesday morning. We said all off season, one of these days we're going to open up Twitter, see the old statement from David Krejci or Patrice Bergeron. You knew when they said it was a statement. It was actually a very well written essay that Patrice Bergeron put out to the Bruins. Obviously he does not have social media. I think he's probably doing the right thing there with no social media. He might be onto something there. But retired and did his press conference on Wednesday. I did a video for for Bruins Rinkside, just kind of explaining my reaction to it. What's your reaction to this?
Yeah, probably a little bit surprised. I think when we were talking about this all throughout the offseason, I think we all, again, just off of what our gut feeling was that he was going to come back. And it's kind of like the reason why, well, one of the reasons why he said he was retiring kind of falls in line with what we were thinking, where it's like, for us, he's still too good of a player. He's still playing at such a high level that it seems like it's in the cards that he'd come back for a 20th year, playing at a high level, go back in that, dependable role in the top line. But on the, opposite side of that token, it's kind of what Bergeron talked about on Wednesday when he was, seemed really at peace and happy with his decision. It's, for him, he retired on top of his game, right? Like, of course, you would have liked the storybook ending of how that year went out. But again, unfortunately, those kind of endings are usually, unless you're like a guy like John Elway or what have you, they're usually saved for Hollywood and those kind of stories. But for a guy like Bergeron, in terms of just all that he's accomplished over his career, to still play at a extremely high level, win a sixth Selke trophy, and to go out as, the best two-way forward, not just in 2022-23, but of all time. I think it's not a hot take to say in terms of what he brings out there on the ice. That was important to him, and for a guy who you look at early on in his career, before his career got off the ground, could have been pretty much grounded because of concussion issues. It sucked that he had that back injury very late in the year, but for him, it wasn't like, it's a recurring knee injury that saps you of your ability to play, or a back injury or what have you. Like, he still walks away from the game as one of the best players in the league while still not having to sacrifice his long-term health in the process. So for him to step away, spend more time for his family is more than deserved for a guy like him. But yeah, in terms of just the impact and the news itself, definitely, I think probably a bit surprising. I think probably for both of us in terms of him decided to hang up his skates, and now it's setting kind of the agenda for the rest of the, not off season because you're kind of at the end of it now, but just setting the tone, I think, for this season in terms of Bruins have the work cut out for them. But also, I think when you look at it, we've mentioned this before, if anything for this season beyond just the obvious being it, viewing it as a bridge year, I think we're going to get clarity, right? We're going to see what some of these younger guys are made of. Can guys like Pavel Zacha and Coyle step into other roles? Like, we'll touch on that in a little bit, but I think ushering in this new era, for years and years, the Bruins have had the ability to fall back on guys like Bergeron and Krejci and Chara. Time has passed now. Time to step into that next era, and we'll see what they're made of. So it's going to be a fascinating kind of transition here. But again, just looking at what Bergeron has accomplished, I mean, what more can you say about a guy who's kind of given his all for this team?
Yeah, I feel like Bergeron's been celebrated so much in his career And you can't say enough. Like, I don't think you can really say enough about his impact and his career. But I think media, fans, the team did a pretty good job in his last 5 years, I would say, of kind of appreciating how good he was. Like the documentaries and the celebrations and St. Patrice and things like that. Like, I think people didn't take it for granted. And I think people understood his significance. I mean, there were calls to name the Selke Trophy the Bergeron Trophy, 6-7 years ago. So I think people enjoyed it. I think people appreciated it. I think, you look at the impact he had on their culture over the last 20. I think the culture he and Zdeno Chara and David Krejci set will probably, if the Bruins are lucky, last the next 20. And, you look at yesterday, what he said about retirement, quote, there were a lot of things that influenced me, but obviously the main thing is probably the body and spending more time with the family. I've always wanted to, and told myself that for me, I wanted to play the game at the highest level that I could. And I felt like I wanted to leave on top of my game and feeling good about it, but also thinking about the future, knowing that I want to continue to be able to spend time with my family, but also being active and doing other things and other endeavors that I've always wanted to, but I've never really had the time to do. And you could tell, I mean, he mentioned during the press conference that there were times this year where he felt there was a better chance than not that this was it. I know, Ty Anderson pointed out on Twitter that that video with all the guys talking in it, all the teammates. I was not at breakup day, so I can't attest to this, but the outfits were the same. So maybe they were just happened to be, they recorded it a couple days ago. The guys just happened to be in the same outfits. But there was another part of the quote, I don't have the quote in front of me. I don't want to have to scroll through, but there's an interesting thing. I don't know if you caught this as well. Bergeron mentioned, when it came time to skate and get back to working out and things like that, the fire wasn't quite there. And I credit to him for realizing it. I think the worst case scenario would be he comes back this year, kind of in it, not really, maybe his play takes a dip. He goes out on top here, or on top of his game. And, it's so funny because you hear people on the radio and you see the occasional, Twitter repliers, like the guy, that jabroni Mark Madden. I don't know where he works or who he works for, but he's been on
it's your arch nemesis city, Pittsburgh.
I know, Pittsburgh, and I have a
is.
history. It's Mark Madden's up next. It was that basement comedian before, and now it's Mark Madden. I don't understand the people love to take a beloved figure and go on the other side and just be like, yeah, he wasn't really that good. And it's like, I heard on the radio, people, who was better, Crosby or Bergeron? It's like, who has been making that argument?
Who the fuck has been comparing those two guys over there?
I have never heard them compared before. They're just both good Canadian centers. I don't know why we're putting them against each other.
It's like the best player of his generation versus, again, Bergeron is a top line center, a Hall of Famer, but there is a gap between those two guys, right?
Yes.
And that's not, again, a disrespect when it's involving a guy like a Crosby or a McDavid or what have you.
Generational talent.
Those are the breaks, or how it is. It's like no one has ever made that argument.
No. Who is writing that story? Who is spending time debating that? And who is picking Bergeron? I would love to know that. But legacy-wise, I mean, the best two-way forward ever. Just an incredible leader. I know for many years, obviously, it was sort of him and Chara co-captaining. It would have been cool, I think, if Bergeron was captain for a little longer. And that's not to say, strip it from Chara. I just mean, what was it, 3 years Bergeron was captain? I feel like if you ask fans, who are younger 20 years from now, and they know about Bergeron's impact, I feel like they'll be like, oh, he was captain for what, 10, 15 years? Right. It's like, well, he kind of was, but technically wasn't. Let's dive into this because we both said our thing, the Stanley Cup element of it. I feel like the only, and this isn't even Bergeron's fault. It doesn't go with this. It doesn't just fall on him, but it would have been so cool for that core to get one more cup. That core of Bergeron and Krejci and Chara and Rask, it would have been so perfect for just one more cup. And I don't know. I mean, I don't think it hurts his legacy that it's only one. I don't think people are like, what could have been. I mean, you look at the consistency and excellence in his play and in the team's play, and I think that that adds a lot to it.
Yeah, I think you kind of, you can be impartial and you can make the argument this core should have, had another championship or two, right? And I think that's fair. I think once we get past all these guys retire, we can look back on it and see kind of this window and wish a few more things fall their way, which again, you're looking at the most unpredictable probably sport out of the big four in North America in terms of, the recipe for success and how things kind of fall your way. But again, if you want to say that Bergeron should have done more in a thing to win another cup or two, it's like you can, point out a whole bunch of things. Even though like 2019, sure, the O'Reilly line was better than that line in 2019. You look at that game 7, like we won't absolve them. Like that is a pretty rough look for a lot of key people in terms of how that game played out. But also look at the fact that, that line below them with David Krejci and DeBrusk have like Carson Kuhlman and David Backes on there. Like if the Bruins went all in and got, guys that are rumored to be after like Mark Stone or what have you, maybe it's different. If they trade for Ryan McDonough a year before that, like again, you can go through all these shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Rick Nash doesn't retire due to concussions.
Yeah, I mean, like before you look at that Chicago series in 2013, where I think everyone after they lost that series was like, shucks, Chicago is better. Pretty close series. And again, Bergeron I think had 4 goals in the first 4 games of that series, and then literally played through torn shoulder, cracked rib, punctured lung that then collapsed. Like literally was not going to be able to play if it went to a game 7 because of it. Like. There's so many other things that play into it. So, yeah, should they have won? Of course. Like, you look at just how good this core is. In fact, you had some of these guys signed to bargain bin deals for a while. But I don't think that takes away what Bergeron has done for this team, this city, this community. Beyond the fact that, one, they also did win a Stanley Cup. Which, like,
yes,
again,
people seem to forget that.
It's one of those things where you look at all these players who – have accomplished so much and how much it matters to win a championship, and how I think you look back at other players who maybe had shorter tenures but had, great stops here in Boston and where these guys kind of map out. It's, I don't know, look at Mookie Betts and what he did in his short time with the Red Sox, like wins a World Series, like validates it, right? Like guys who've been there for longer, like Paul Pierce for the Celtics, validated by winning a championship. Like as much as you could make the argument that like, Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett and those guys probably should have won another one. Like they probably should have won in 2009, should have beat the Lakers in game 7 in 2010. Like, is that taking away from what they did? Like they are still, have entrenched themselves in a very historic franchise that has a lot of impact star Hall of Fame players. And for what Bergeron did, not just on the ice, but, how important he was off of it in terms of, I think when people look at what he represented, I think the first thing that comes to mind is like class, right? In terms of, setting the tone in that locker room, being accountable, accessible, inclusive for his teammates. He's a guy who didn't say much at times, but when he did, a lot of people listened. Seemed to always have a really good pulse in terms of how to approach things, how to talk to his teammates, all those things. It's things that I think probably people take for granted, but I think it's kind of, you kind of said it earlier, Evan, where people started to give him more respect and, it was more out in the open in terms of how much of an impactful force he was on and off the ice. And I feel like you could talk to not just people in the Bruins locker room, but guys across the league in terms of how personable, caring, accessible a guy like Bergeron was. And I think that speaks volumes in terms of just the player, but especially the person he was. So, yeah, so you can look at the trophies, the banners, all those things, which again, he did win one, like most importantly, but for what, his impact is for this team. And then you said it earlier, like it's ideally going to live on in terms of the culture and the foundation he's built. It's going to be carried on by guys like Marchand and younger guys like McAvoy, Pastrnak, and kind of that next wave. Like, even though he's no longer there on the ice, like his impact, I think, is going to be felt for a long, long time.
Long time.
Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets for up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting on everything, from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to crush the first home run of the game. And frankly, that's the best part of FanDuel. You can bet on anything. You want to wager on the odds of how many dingers Rafael Devers will hit this year? Be my guest. Maybe the Bruins over-under for wins next season. Go for it. So bet now on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/Boston to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/Boston. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball.
His impact, I think, is going to be felt for a long, long time.
Long time. And it's so interesting because I feel like, and we can get into this, his most famous moment, the moment I think that everyone's going to remember him by, is ultimately not from that 2011 run. I don't think. Impactful, sure. You can do the 2 goals in Game 7, 100%. But I think those 2 goals in Game 7 against Toronto in 2013, I mean, that is as clutch is. The shot from the point goes through like 5 people right to the top of the net, and then the goal in overtime where it's just kind of a shot from the outside. Both goals, I think, kind of epitomize him. He was always in the right place at the right time, and he always did the right thing. And that shot from the point, I mean, just a smart shot, a well-placed shot, and then the goal in overtime, just perfect place, supporting the play, all that stuff. I mean, do you have another play in mind that might top that?
Yeah, I mean, that one's up there, as you said, like maybe doesn't make the highlight reel, or at least, as much as those 2 games. I think like that shorthanded goal hustle play in Game 7 in Vancouver is like a perfect encapsulation of what he provides in terms of hustle, shorthanded prowess, all the things. Pretty much iced that game at the very tail end of the second period. It's one thing to be part of a team that wins a championship, but I mean, that is like a LeBron Game 6 dagger performance in enemy territory. He ate their lunch in that game and throughout that series. But
that shorthanded goal was wild too. Yeah. Came in, just like fended off defenders. Right through. Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, and I think the other one, it's not even just a play, but I think it's that Game 6 and playing through those amount of injuries. I think he's a guy that, as much as he's known for his, compassion, communication, those things, it's, the will to win, to put yourself through that, to go right to the hospital after that game. I mean, it just, imagine kind of the whirlwind if Game 6 doesn't end the way it does, and knowing he's not going to be out there, but what he gave to bring that game back to the United Center in Chicago. I mean, those are just all those things that you look at it, and it's almost like you took it for granted at the end of it, right? Where there's so many times where I think Bergeron, I think it was in that Carolina series last year, where he takes that puck up high, gets hit, leaves the ice. It's almost like you expect him to be back, right? When it's almost like every time you felt like the situation where he was going to get really banged up, you knew he was going to fight through it and see, what he had out there. And he kind of mentioned that in his retirement press conference, that he left everything out there. And you look at what he did to try to, win that other cup in 2013. I don't know. You can really kind of dispel that narrative for all he kind of put himself through to help about this team that, he kind of considered his home, his whole career.
Yeah, I think you're right about the whole one cup is more than enough thing, because you just look at the 6 Selkies, and I mean, the consistency that they had in his time here. I mean, the only bad year was 06-07, I think, and 05-06. And
everyone stunk.
That was not him. That was nothing to do with him. And every other year they were, at least in contention. I think the only other than those 2 years, correct me if I'm wrong, the only 2 years they missed the playoffs were 14, 15, 15, 16. And those were like, came down to the last couple games of the regular season, right? Like, so right. Again, I just a winner and a competitor. And, a lot of kids in coming up the ranks look up to certain guys. I don't know how you can't look up to Patrice Bergeron. What's funny is a lot of the local kids around here, if you ask them and they're forwards, who do you look up to? Who do you model your game after? It is 99 times out of 100 Patrice Bergeron, which I think is a very good thing. The way he plays the game, the class he brings, and all that. The other moment that came to mind, and it's a regular season moment, so I guess it doesn't matter as much, but do you remember, I think it was 2010, they were on a power play and the puck got sent down towards their, or they weren't on a power play. It was a delayed penalty. The goalie went to the bench, shot goes off the boards. Bergeron's last one back and prevented it from going in the open net on the goal line. That's the other, just the hustle. I mean, again, a lot of hustle, a lot of heart. With that, there's so much we could say about Bergeron, and we will in the future. And we've said a lot already. But the Bruins must go on. The Bruins must go on. Unfortunately, they must still play this season, which is ridiculous. I can't believe they should be able to take the season off. But the real question, what's funny is, Connor, on Bruins Beat, we discussed this, and I think
we sure did.
I don't think it went up on YouTube, but I know it's out on audio. So people on audio are probably like, why is this up? If he's retiring anyway. Well, it was recorded Monday, and I just said, we need to do some topic, and this is what we'll do. I promise it was somewhat random. Are they still contenders?
Contenders? Right now, I think the prevailing kind of sentiment I think we both shared over the last couple months is if Bergeron's back, I think you're hovering around 100 points and you're right in the mix. Without him, 90, 95, and I think you're in the picture, right? Are they a top flight contender? No, but I think you still have a foundation and a base that if you look at just the formula for how you can kind of punch your ticket to the playoffs, still have a very, very good defense, a very, very good goaltending situation. They have enough personnel in place to gut out and grind out points that I still think they're going to be in the mix. But you need to also have a lot go your way, and a lot of it revolves around the center position, right? This is we knew this was coming for a long time. Again, we don't know for sure if David Krejci is retiring, but I think that seems to be the prevailing thought that you're going to be now without Bergeron and Krejci this upcoming year. So it's going to rely on guys to step up, right? You've got a lot of talent, I think, on the wing, but if you're not having guys down the middle that can drive, play, and hold around on the other end of the ice, you're kind of rudderless in that spot, right? Look at the Vegas Golden Knights for years and years, right? They had a lot of really talented players on the wing, a lot of talent all across the depth chart. Didn't have a lot of guys down the middle that could drive that play. Get a guy like Eichel, things kind of just fall into place. I mean, that's one of the most important things of guys like Bergeron is just the domino effect of slotting guys into their proper roles. And it's going to, whether it's a guy like Zacha stepping up who, is due, I think, for a larger role anyway. Is Charlie Coyle a top six center? We've kind of gone down this road before, and it's been up and down in terms of where he best fits in that spot. Is a guy like Morgan Geekie going to get a look where, he's got good production over the limited minutes with Seattle, but maybe he has more to give? Are we getting a surprise Georgi Merkulov? Is Matthew Poitras, who's is stuck in this weird spot, right, where he's either going back to the OHL or he's going to the NHL? There's no in between in terms of his age. So is he a guy that's going to get a significant run in the preseason to see if maybe he can stick if you give him, really favorable teammates? It's up in the air, but you need someone to hit, right? You either need Coyle to take a big step forward, Zacha to step forward, guys like that. You need younger players down the line to supplement the vacancies that are going to happen as we're also pushing guys up there as well. So, I think before we were looking at Bergeron came back, it's all right, is a guy like Lauko, where's he going to fit into the lineup? He needs to hit wherever he is, whether it's on the third line now or the fourth line. If Frederick signs, he needs to drive play and be a guy that can be accountable in whatever role he is. You need a lot to go your way, but it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out. Because again, you've got, I wouldn't say it's a safety net, but you have an area of your roster locked up in terms of the defense and the goaltending, and that should be good enough. But if you want to be a contender or you want to hover beyond the 90, 95 point range, we need some forwards, young and established guys, to take a big step forward. And, the onus is on them. The Bruins have been bailed out years and years from having guys like Bergeron and Krejci. Now let's see the next wave kind of step up and see what they got here.
See, I think they are contenders for the wild card. I think that's what I think they're contenders for. And we agree on this. I don't, I think they're somewhere in the middle of those points that you mentioned. But you know what doesn't agree with us? FanDuel. Our friends at FanDuel would not. FanDuel has the Bruins right now tied for the second best odds in the Atlantic to win the Atlantic at plus 370, which is, I don't think that's them being wrong, because they're not. FanDuel can never be wrong. They're our good friends. Never, ever. But I think that's more an indictment on the Atlantic Division, which we've said for a while now. it's not the power. I don't think it's going to be the powerhouse this year that it has been in past years. I mean, you can go down the list. The Lightning are older. They're not as deep. They've had so many runs, when's it going to catch up to them? The Maple Leafs don't have a goaltender, and on D continue to have 2 and 3 defensemen be number one defenseman, and it's sort of like replacing a real number one in the aggregate, like bringing my Moneyball jargon to the table. Then you obviously they have the Florida Panthers in the 4th best odds, Senators, they have the Sabres low. So again, it's the route is open for the Bruins to, again, I'm not going to predict them to be a 2 or 3, just because, again, I am not sold on whoever your number one center is, or your Zacha. I think Zacha will be fine as number 2, but whoever your number 1 is, if it's Zacha or Coyle or whoever, I'm not completely sold on that. And what's also interesting is Stanley Cup bets. Stanley Cup, they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They have the 8th best cup odds in the league, which I just, to me, I think I'm not sold on your top 6 centers unless Vegas knows something and there's a trade coming, which again I have no idea. But I don't predict them to be cup contenders right now. But you're right though, in the sense that the goaltending is there if it stays the same until opening night. The defense is there because you didn't, if Swayman and Frederick come back under 5.4 million, together, you'll keep Grzelcyk and Forbort. So then, you'll have what? Grzelcyk, McAvoy, Lindholm, Carlo, and Forbort, and Shattenkirk. Great.
Yeah,
I mean, that's fine.
You more or less have the same defense before Orlov, if you want to swap out Clifton and Shattenkirk, but more or less the same defense that before the deadline, I think was 44, 8, and 5.
Yeah. Was that it before the deadline? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those are bananas numbers. But yeah, I don't think they're going to be bad. I just think they were contending for the number 1 spot in the Atlantic with Bergeron. Now they're going to be contending for a wild card spot. Also, fortunately, that top 10 pick the pick they sent to Detroit is top 10 protected. So there is that in case something crazy happens.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, we'll have more on the on what they do next, how they kind of handle Bergeron's loss. And, it's interesting. I was listening to the radio the other day and Felger mentioned Morgan Geekie as potential number 2 center. And he mentioned your research, your terrific data research as a reason why he might be able to fit in that number 2 spot. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not sold on Morgan Geekie being the number 2 center, but you know what, Connor? Bergeron's retired. I am open to anything. You could put Ty Anderson at at the number 1 center spot, and I would say, you know what? Let's try it out. Let's see what happens.
Those Centennial jerseys will be selling like crazy.
Going like hotcakes.
Yes. I mean, that's the thing. It's, it's kind of echoing what we said before, but the very least you go into this year now, one, the Bruins still have flexibility. You kind of touched on, I think, on Bruins beat. If things go haywire and a lot of guys don't hit and the young guys aren't ready, someone gets hurt, you have the flexibility to sell off assets at the deadline and get a better return than you would this season and still set yourself up to retool more aggressively this next offseason. If they do great and they make the playoffs, and at that point you let the dice kind of fall where they may, and if this team that has a lot of younger players step up and you've got a lot of big bodies that can kind of knock those around to go on a deep run, you have that option as well. There's no shortage of ways this season can play out, but as long as you're building towards hopefully next offseason when you can really kind of make a dent in terms of this cap flexibility you have, at the very least, it's what I keep on harping on. It's this year, you're at least going to finally get some answers on stuff. We always talk about Bergeron and Krejci are gone. What's gonna happen? Are young guys ready? What are Sweeney and Neely going to do when they don't have these top 6 guys in place so they can anchor their lineup around? We're about to find out. Can Pavel Zacha step up? 82 games. Charlie Coyle looked great in the playoffs when he's in top 6 role. Can do it for 82 games? We'll see. It's, is the hype there as it was in March and April this past year? No, of course not. But it's not like this team is just pretty much putting up the white flag. Barring, again, who knows if we have another offseason trade or what have you. But even if they stand pat, it's going to be fascinating to see just how many of these players thrust into new roles, how they run with it. We're about to find out a lot about the metal and makeup of a lot of different guys all across the lineup. It's going to be really interesting and I think fun to see how it all plays out.
There's a lot of opportunity. Speaking of good decisions and opportunity and metal, Connor, what are you going to be doing over at Boston.com and the Globe that we can look forward to?
Yeah, we're going to have you covered throughout this offseason, whether it's, again, any more trades, looking at now the lineup, now that we know that Bergeron's not back, things start falling into place a little bit more in terms of prepping for the offseason or the rest of the summer. So we'll have you covered every step of the way there. I'm also at Pat's training camp. I'll be at all the other big things that happen around the Boston sports world this summer. So you can follow me wherever I am over at Boston.com. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
You're going to be throwing touchdown passes and catching them and everything.
I sure hope not, Evan.
I am hoping to see the videos. Over at New England Hockey Journal, a lot of the top prospects in New England are about to recruit or get recruited to colleges and accept offers. And it's going to be very interesting stuff. A couple future NTDP kids, all that stuff. So if you're interested in that, go subscribe to New England Hockey Journal as well. That's Conor Ryan, Evan Marinofsky. You Poke the Bear listeners, try your best to have a great rest of your week.